Zero apologies.
Droppin Truths.
This is Kyle Cronk.
And I'm Dr. Sarahlloyd.
We are here to bring you compelling topics on social justice and anti-racism work in our local community with YMCA leaders.
We're so excited you're joining us. We hope you learn together and you get to grapple with the truths we drop.
So it's time to do the work. Buckle up. Welcome back.
Hi!
Woo!
What's up?
Zero apologies.
Droppin Truths.
Whew, it has been, what is it? Episode 5 is out. 6, 7. Where are we?
Why do you do that?
I don't know. Just roll with it. I told you, this is the good show vibe.
Okay,
Now
you're creating it?
We're trying to figure it out.
Just sprinkle it in there. What do you want to talk about today, Kyle Cronk?
Why are we here in the first place? What are we talking about? Generally, not like the topic of the show.
Oh.
What are we?
Like in general?
Like, why are we here?
We're here because you said I should come, and I was like, I'm scared of that guy, so.
No, I don't think that is it. No, we're trying to, we're working on social justice, anti-racism, specifically in the South Sound, Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey, Yelm. Give a shout out to Yelm, Shelton.
Rainier.
Tenino. Bacoto.
Bacoto.
What was it called?
Bucota.
See? You can pronounce it. You're good.
Thank you.
Today we talk about these topics. We sit with I sit with a lot of discomfort. I don't know if you're discomfortable.
No, I'm always comfortable.
You're very comfortable.
Yeah.
And we sit with, and we talk about things that are hard to talk about and that don't get, addressed very often. And today we're going to talk about pro-life, pro-black, right?
Yep.
And we're going to talk about the concept. This could go into election stuff as well.
Potentially.
Because that's where it came from. But there's been a lot of just talk in the news about that sort of thing. So that's the topic today. Are you okay? That good show vibe. I can see it rolling over you.
Is it in waves?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the conversations that we have, I think, are important for a couple of reasons. One, because I want people to see what it can look like to have hard conversations that people persist through, and that it doesn't look like pandering or catering to white comfort, and that the truth is the truth, whether it's little t or big T truth, and that for us to really bring about real change, there has to be a shift in the dynamic of brown and black voices being silenced and being turned down so that white comfort can persist. And so I think out of those conversations, one thing we talked about around election time was that there are so many people who on the conservative slant are pro-life and in the same breath can be okay with black lives being lost.
Right.
And so what does it look like for pro-life to literally mean all of life at all times, at all stages, and not just in utero, right? Because it's hard for me to reconcile if someone is like, this is why I stand in the space with people who do real harm, but because I want to uphold the value of a human life. And those same people are silent when people are shot and killed, especially by police, but just in general. And so that lack of accountability and lack of continuity is not okay. And I think it's important that we talk about that.
And so thank you for framing it that way. And then, so what is the way to connect that? So the last episode was that we had shot was talking about connecting, or one of the episodes was about connecting to our humanity, and talk about empathy. And from my perspective, it is all about empathy. That, how do you get to I've not been in a place where I've questioned whether or not a black life mattered. So that hasn't been my true story. But how, for people that are finding it challenging to do that, to sit in that, what seems to me a conundrum is that, yes, I support, I'm pro-life, but I can see all this death and destruction around me that's happening to black and brown people, and I'm not there. But I am solidly here, and I'll go to the mat for this, but I won't for that. And so talk about that from the perspective of connecting to our humanity. Talk about that, or but it's not an understanding. It's how do we connect to that empathy? Because I mean, for me, when we start to walk in someone's shoes that's not like us, that's when we can connect to that basic humanity.
Sure, but I think first of all, I think the parallel of walking in people's shoes is like an oversimplification, and it's way too late. I think we're talking about people who may not even have shoes, so how do you walk in their shoes, right? Like, because they don't even have access to the shoe to begin with. So I think it's about, and same with empathy. I think some people are empathetic and some people are not, and even if you aren't empathetic, we still need you to do this. So I think it's more core than just empathy. I think there's a piece of, for instance, my best friend has a beautiful son who just turned 2. His name is Tatum. That's my nephew.
I know Tatum.
Okay. Tatum is so cute. Oh my God. Marissa and I have had many conversations about, I mean, he is one of those kids, you know how like some people have ugly babies and so you're like, and then you're like, hopefully they grow out of it, right? And then they become, no, Tatum came out beautiful and has been beautiful this whole time.
True story.
And he's a stellar looking kid, right?
Yep.
But we have talked about many times, like when is the moment, like the single moment when he flips from this like beautiful, adorable kid to a monster and a danger and a threat? Like when is that moment?
The fear.
Because real fear exists around black men who walk around in society.
Right.
People really are like, they're the super predators and all of these different things. Right. And so when is the moment? Because I look at that kid and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm done having kids. Like, he's that freaking cute.
No, I totally agree with you.
And so when is that moment, right? And when you understand what pours into that moment that can transfer someone so pure and so delightful and full of so much joy, and in a single second be like, I was afraid he was going to kill me. Like, until we understand that moment, then we can't say like, oh, just have empathy for him, because you can be like, I feel really bad for him in my soul, and I feel like I'm walking in his shoes as I send him to prison, as I call the police, as I do these things. And so it's bigger than empathy. I think it's this core level of understanding, again, like we are in this together. And if I'm drowning, that means your lungs are filling with water. And until you understand that, then what do we have to talk about?
I mean, do you think it's a lack of understanding, though? That seems also too simplistic. It can't be a lack of understanding that people don't think that people should die.
I think it's an I don't think people understand that, like, your success is tied to my ability to live. Well, I don't think people understand that.
Yeah, and I'm with you. So help us bridge that gap, because we've talked about the we before me, that whole concept. I mean, I am there, and I see the same thing that I think that you're trying to communicate, is that to break down the system and to really have black liberation and freedom, the whole system has to come down. And there's no way that system comes down if only a few people are trying to dismantle it.
Right. Yeah, I think it's like, so what people don't want to acknowledge is that anti-blackness is, first of all, global. It's a global issue. And number 2, it's woven into not like the paint color. It's not in the fucking curtains in your house. It is in the foundation. So I don't know if you know much about construction. Do you?
I know enough to probably follow this analogy. I'm hopeful.
We'll see.
Yeah.
So, the mixing of the foundation, right? It's a very intense process that no one knows takes that many steps unless you work in construction.
Sure.
But it starts with dry mix and water that comes together to be laid into the foundation, right?
Yep.
What I am saying is, I think a lot of people are like, racism is kind of like that one house in your, like, that one room in your house where you haven't redesigned yet because you ran out of money. And so you're like, just don't mind that. But it's like the curtains in that room, right? So you keep the door shut. Sometimes you open it. Sometimes you acknowledge the fact that it's there. But it's like the gross curtains in the fucked up room.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is there is a sediment that is inside of that powder that is mixed together with that water to make the fucking foundation. That's where racism is. And so anti-blackness, like when we came to this country, we were literally property and chattel. We were like cows being traded for money. And so every dollar that exists today has anti-blackness woven into it. Every single like infrastructure has anti-blackness in it. And so unless we understand that black liberation is not the liberation of black people, it's the liberation of our country from this fucked up construction that we have, then people can't ever connect to that really, because they can separate themselves from it, right? They can say like, we had a beautiful Thanksgiving dinner over in this room over here. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about that. We're talking about the foundation. Mm-hmm. And if that meal happened on a floor, which is on top of that foundation, then we're talking about fucking anti-blackness.
Right. So how do you separate that out and go, and now for our viewers, listeners, tie that back into where are we back to pro-life, Black Lives Matter, or a Black Life Matters, and mattering? I mean, all of this tied in together, how do we start to chip away, or to, chip away isn't the right word, the word that, like separating the anti-blackness from that foundation?
Because you can't. I think you have to take the foundation up and start again. And so because...
So we need a new mix.
Oh, absolutely. And because you cannot have a conversation with any person, I don't think, unless you're talking about like, the 1.5% of the population that are sociopaths, and even then they have some connection to some human. Like if you could talk to any person and say like, tell me a population that you don't want to die anymore. They could tell you one. It might be different. It might be like babies. It might be like, my Nana, whatever. We love Nana, by the way. Shout out to Nana. But like, someone cares about someone's life. So being like, if you care about that life, then you care about all of them. Like you can't tease it out and say, well, I only like people who have brown hair, so people with blonde hair, take them. It's like, if you care about this, then you care about all of it.
So we need to get back to the idea, or viewers that are listening to this and trying to understand and struggle with it and sit with that level of discomfort. It's they're questioning, or my question maybe is like, how do we begin to rebuild? So we're going to take up the foundation. I'm all for that. How are we going to get to rebuild this? Is it rebuilding from the perspective of centering blackness? To remove the stuff that was in there?
I think the ability to sit in this moment and say, okay, what do we do about that, is fucking whiteness. I think the ability to say, we have to get to a point where we understand, like, if I give a fuck about one single life, then I care about them all. And that, sitting in that fucking space is what we have to do. Because right now what happens is I'm like, pro-life equals pro-black. And people are like, I don't even know what the fuck that means. Give me a to-do list, though. And they walk around with a to-do list. And they didn't grapple with the fact that, like, in their lives, they have been perpetuating anti-blackness. So what does that mean? I think it means, like, do a fucking inventory of what are all the spaces where you chose a white life over someone else when they also deserve to fucking live. Do that. And will it be fucking ugly? Yes. But here's the reality. Y'all post it out your fucking windows instead of looking in. And so we walk around and see it every fucking day. I could tell you the 92 ways you've been anti-black today. But you don't know. And so the priority, it's like if I'm telling you the most important thing in life is fucking chocolate chip cookies, and you're like, I don't give a fuck about chocolate chip cookies. And I'm like, no, Kyle, like, move your fucking meetings. We're making these fucking chocolate chip cookies. There will be things that get in the way. And if not today, then tomorrow. You'll be like, oh, what happened, Sarah? They ran out of butter. Like, fuck that. You sit in your chair and you wrestle until you understand the most important fucking thing today is chocolate chip cookies. And until you sit in that space, I don't know what it looks like to uproot the foundation. Because the reality is the people who have all the answers and all the resource and all the wisdom don't have access to what's actually in the fucking pantry.
So as people are sitting in that level of discomfort, which I'm sitting in now, just
welcome,
washing over me. Once they struggle with that and they sit with it, I don't think they can do that alone.
No, that's why you do it in community.
Right.
And I think this whole process has been building on top of each other, right? It's like a
Right,
fitness
so-
plan. You start with one sit-up, and then you can go into fucking, like, I don't know, V-ups and shit.
So at this point, though, we need to provide some path for our viewers, because I don't think that most of our viewers are out there. If they are sitting in their own discomfort, I think they're lost.
Great.
So let's find a way to help them cling on to something. And that was the point of this type of show, is where do you find that community? And one example would be within the Y.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think the Y has, for a long time, been a space that has been doing mission-driven work beyond creating a gym that also has a pool.
Right.
And we continually do very concerted effort to make sure that not only are we creating space that exists, but space that all people can show up and feel like they were actually like invited on purpose. And so, yeah, if you have no community at all, then figure out how to connect with the Y. If you have no community at all and you're wrestling with this, wrestle and then come back in 2 weeks and we'll be here.
I mean, go back to, we've got, I forget what it's called. What's the fancy thing on Facebook that we've got? A page?
A page. It's not fancy.
It's super fancy. You did such a good job with that.
Thank you.
So that's a way that people can connect with us.
Absolutely. They can subscribe to YouTube.
They could be in community with us.
Absolutely.
To
They can
sit-
literally friend you on Facebook if they want to.
Right, and sit and wrestle with it.
Absolutely.
I'm sure somebody knows how the friend thing on Facebook works, right?
Yikes. I have so many concerns about your technological
I
side.
had to throw that out for you. As the good show vibes are washing over you.
Are they? Mm-hmm. I'm here. Yay.
So, back to sitting with the discomfort. And then connecting to community.
Mm-hmm.
Are at least some certain steps that need to go on.
Yeah, I think have really honest conversations with the people in your community. I think, all of us are connected. So it's, for instance, like I think I'm a firm believer in the idea that we're a product of the 5 people we spend the most time with, okay? And I have done countless trainings and all that kind of stuff with groups of people. And there's always one person who's like, I don't have 5. And I'm like, yes, you do. If you don't have 5
Feels
that
like
you can name right now, then you're not being accountable to who that 5 is. You're not managing the shit out of the 5. You have to manage the 5 because the 5 people you spend the most time with, and it's not like the 5 people I like the most. It's the 5 people I have the most contact with. If you're not managing that, those people are depositing into your life what you will become, and you're not even accountable to it. So, for instance, if my very best friend is like a fitness fanatic, I'm best friends with Peter, okay? If I spend time
shout out
with
to Peter.
Peter's dope. If I spend time with Peter constantly, it won't last long that I'm like eating hella meat. I just eat like fucking donuts and Twinkies, and I never work out. It won't work.
I think they need to know that.
Peter is a fitness fanatic.
And he's vegetarian, right? Or vegan. Vegan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And he eats like, also, some people are vegan, but they're like, I just eat like saltine crackers. Like, Peter eats like whole clean food and shit. It's intense.
Right.
And he's very fit, okay?
Sure. Absolutely.
So if that's my best friend.
So if you hang out with Peter.
We spend 10 hours a day together. I cannot not become that in some part. I'm going to start being like, as I'm unwrapping my Twinkie, being like, I don't know that I should be eating this, right? And it's the same principle. If I surround myself with people, accidentally or on purpose, who consistently are like, fuck those black people, then I'm going to be like, yeah, I feel that. If I'm around people who are like, I want to do the work, I want to learn constantly, then it spreads, right? And so I think for people who are like, I don't have community, you're just not being accountable to it. So number 1, be accountable. Figure out who your 5 is.
And in that accountability is really taking an honest look to figure out who
honest
that is.
Look.
Yeah.
And what it doesn't mean, if I have, for instance, like, everybody has that racist relative. You're like, I can't just tell, Uncle Mike to like stop calling me, you can prioritize how you spend time. I don't know why Mike is such a jackass, but he is. He's a jackass.
Poor Mike.
I know. Sorry, Mike.
Maybe
Anyway.
he's sitting with his discomfort right now.
Probably. And looking at his 5, which he should.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that I'm like, I just did this exercise. I figured out who my 5 are. You need to stop calling me. But it does mean, like, how do I start reprioritizing the people in my life who can help me move forward?
Right.
So I think, look at your community. Figure out what they're doing. Figure out how they behave and how that reflects on you, because it does. If I have a best friend who's out just spewing hate and I'm like, well, I love them dearly, but they're a hateful person, that's a reflection on me.
Sure.
And it's feeding into who I'm becoming. So I think that's the action point for today.
So I like that.
Look at your 5. Figure out what they're saying about you. And if you think you don't have a 5, then it's even more urgent that you look at your 5.
And if you really don't have your 5, then hit us up on Facebook.
And always add Kyle Cronk to your 5.
And Sarah,
Your friends
are you not allowed?
I'm an acquired taste. So
it's the hot sauce, right?
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Appropriate level of hot sauce.
Exactly.
Today was what? Garlic sriracha?
Garlic sriracha.
That's what you
Zero
said this morning.
tofu.
Yep. No, that was a brilliant thing. We can't get
Thank
into
you.
that because that's not really on topic. But I want to acknowledge. I want to go back to where we were where I was sitting in the discomfort, because I one, thank you.
You're welcome.
And 2, that was very real for me. It was really raw, authentic, truthful, and it's going to make me go back and think not only about my 5, but about what else am I doing and how else can I connect other people to this work, because as we've talked about, this work is. What did we talk about? The marathon versus the 5K, and if you sprint out, we were talking about this. From George Floyd's murder, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of urgency around that, and then the summer hit, and then all of that kind of waned, and it was like the analogy of the 3K versus the 5K, and don't just go out and sprint, but we need everybody in this for the long haul. And again, to continue to dismantle the system, we're going to need everybody in this fight.
Yeah, and to be authentically in it, because I don't have to get into it right now, but like there's a real compelling picture about how different demographic groups voted.
Oh, God.
And what the nation's vote would look like if like just black folks voted, if just women voted. And so what it highlights is that there's a huge difference between what you're hearing every day and then what actually is occurring. And so when you can look at the election results, for instance, and be like, oh, Joe Biden won, yeah. Sure. Also, like the number of people who voted for Trump increased.
Substantially.
By millions.
Yeah, right.
And so it's looking at the realness of, I don't give a fuck. I would rather have you be like, I'm not doing that fucking work. I don't give a shit about your life. It'd be fucked up, but I would rather hear that to know actually where I'm at than this Northwest nice bullshit, passive aggressive shit where it's like, oh, I love you and the birds. And the birds. I love the birds. I'm going to vote for the birds. And then they're like, fucking Trump.
Right.
Like, because that's not cool. And I can't deal with the fake shit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you're going to be in the work, do the fucking work. If you're at like training wheels level of the work, cool. I will run behind you with my hand on the little, banana seat bike.
Yeah.
We've all had a banana
I
seat
forget
bike.
what that little lever's called, but yeah.
So I'm happy to do that. And if you're committed to being racist until you die, I'm happy to know that. Because here's the point. I have converted my own belief, which shows that this process is about all of us growing. I really did start this process being like, we need all of us. But it's not actually statistically true.
Which process are we talking about?
This whole process of hanging out with white folks intentionally, which has never been a hobby of mine.
Or a high point.
No. But for me now, what I believe statistically is that the real turning point is not at 100%.
Right. We had talked
because
about
you
that.
have the 2.5 on the ends, you have the 12.7 next, and then you have this 67%.
Right. The big middle.
So the breaking point is actually at about 68% or some shit.
Right.
So if you aren't with us, that's okay. And
I'd rather you be with us, though. Wouldn't you?
well, sure, but
Why
you're
not-
like
why
real
not
white and
be into that?
kumbaya, and you think
Why-
like everything
No.
works.
I'll give you a nice little hand squeeze.
I can't with you.
No? Why not?
Moving forward,
Fair enough.
if you're gonna do the work, do it authentically.
Look at you being all tasky now.
I know. I really care about each moment being as productive as possible.
I know you do.
Mm-hmm.
Say that, not that last bit, but go back
I
to
really
the thing.
care about each moment.
No, the 68. So, because I think this is an interesting topic when you talk about, I think for the voting thing and the maps, we definitely want to talk about that at a different episode when we can figure out some mystical way to get those
It's
maps
not that mystical.
on.
You just have
It's-
a Logan.
It-
That's all
yeah,
you do.
Right.
I
Logan
love
will,
Cabin
like-
Light Studios, by
I
the
know.
way.
It's awesome. Cabin Light. We're back in their studios, by
Yeah.
the way, which is so cool. Now it's really a studio. I digress.
You do.
I want to go back to what you were talking about, the 68%. And because we did struggle with, this might be one that was in the vault, because I think that there was a time where you and I were talking and we discussed this concept that we need everybody. Everybody needs, I remember, I think it was at Harlequin, because my analogy was we got to bring them out of the bleachers and out of the big stands, that everybody needs to get on the field. And that was kind of where we had landed. So what was
Right.
what was the turning point or the learning?
Here's the thing. There are some people who will hold on with death grip, right? Like kung fu death grip, about like what they believe they will lose if they give to the collective good. Okay.
Yeah.
So my energy and time is not best used in that space.
Yeah.
Also, if you look at any other thing, like let's take technology, okay? The iPhone, yes, I've had every single one except for I think like iPhone 4.
Okay.
There are people now who still own flip phones. And the reason they do that is because those flip phones will still work on the 4G network. Now, when everything switches to 5G, that flip phone might stop working. And at that point, that person who is like, this flip phone is everything,
Love it.
only because it won't work on the 5G network will they actually go buy the iPhone, but they will buy like the iPhone 7 or some shit.
Right.
So those are called late adopters.
Super
Okay.
late.
Then past a late adopter is the person who's like, look, I just won't have a cell phone if I can't have a flip phone. And then maybe they get
No
into
phone.
some like insane situation where a cell phone would have saved their life, and maybe at that point they'll buy one, but maybe they might be like, that was weird.
Okay, so
that's
no phone.
2.5% of the population at any one time.
Got it.
If the population is normally distributed.
Okay.
So if that's possible, but you can actually turn the tide at 68%, right? You think of a bell curve, and this part right here, when it curves back down,
Yep.
is when you've turned the tide.
Yes.
Then you don't technically need those 2.5% people to like buy an iPhone for the iPhone to have done a takeover.
Yeah.
The same is true about social justice. The same is true about radical acceptance of blackness. The same is true about creating space in which blackness is centered.
Radical acceptance of blackness. That sounds good.
So, I mean, we
So-
would love for you to be on the journey. And
Right.
also, if you're like, nah, ignorance is my play, then like get it. But
Own it.
it's not gonna, it's gonna be less and less comfortable for you as time goes on.
Right. So to recap, should we do a recap? Are we getting close?
You
to
love a good recap.
Recapping. Well, yeah. Sometimes I can give a good summary, but I don't know if I can this time. So what we've got is, yeah. Why don't you do the recap?
I love it. Okay, so number one, look at your 5.
Oh, my
Right.
5. Yep.
Because whether or not you're being accountable to it, you have it. And those people are feeding into who you will become.
And if you don't have your 5, look again.
And then add Kyle Cronk on Facebook.
And sarahlloyd.
I mean, if you want to.
No, go to Zero Apologies. There'll be a bunch of people there.
Absolutely.
There's 400 people there.
Yeah, there are 400 people
So
there.
why wouldn't you connect there?
Yeah,
That
join
sounds
us,
like-
join the community,
Yeah,
do the work.
Why not?
And
Come
do the
on.
work authentically, right?
Yeah.
And just be at where you're at.
And here's the thing, because I've had other people text or email and say, well, you said blah, 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 and, wow, I couldn't believe that, or what about that? I mean, I think you can have some dialogue and conversation about that, because that would be you sitting in that discomfort,
Right.
asking those questions and trying to squirm,
Yeah, absolutely.
for lack of a better term.
In community with other people who are on all points of that continuum of I'm not really sure, but I keep listening, all the way to like I'm team Zero Apologies and I'm getting a tattoo tomorrow.
That'd be cool. Like to meet that person. And then
man.
are we shouting out to a black-owned business?
Absolutely.
I can't wait.
It's
Do you
gonna
have
be
it?
real good. It's real good. It is. Wait for it. Oh man, now my phone's all jankety. I'm gonna need you to edit this out, Logan.
A new word, jankety.
It's not new. It's Old Faithful. Come on. Man, I was so prepared. I was so proud of myself. Logan,
We
literally
can shout
edit this
out. I know that we can shout out Cabin Light Studios,
We can.
brown owned.
Soul Sweet Vegan.
Bring it. Tell me what
Yeah.
that is.
So it is a black-owned business.
Yes.
They serve the most delicious vegan food. And like literally everything they serve is vegan. But it's like good. Sorry, people.
Where is this business?
They're located in the Lacey Olympia area.
Woo!
They do catering. So good. So
All right. One more
Good
time
stuff.
on the name.
Soul Sweet Vegan.
Soul Sweet Vegan. Can't wait to try.
Find them on Facebook.
Yep.
It's good stuff.
Awesome.
Speaking of, Logan and Peter got some shout outs today.
Right.
Brenda also.
Yep.
Super dope.
Yep.
Miguel's all right, We
love Miguel.
No, we love Miguel.
He's good.
Cabin Light Studios.
I
So
know.
good.
And we're actually in, I think, episode 6 and 7 were shot here as well. Mm-hmm. Really comfortable space. The biggest light I've ever seen is in this room.
It's not the light, it's
it's not?
actually the dome. The light itself is small. So
All right. I'm sitting with my discomfort about lighting.
there you go. But Cabin Light is brown owned and brown operated.
Yes.
So I love working with them because not only are they exceptional, but they also
They're funny.
they're very funny. They're being so funny right now.
Right.
Okay. And we're contributing to brown generational wealth.
I
And
know.
love
Isn't that fun?
I love that.
Yeah. And they're dancing.
They are dancing.
Yep,
It's
which
real
is good.
I love you guys.
Anything else that we need to say to our viewing audience?
Come back next time.
Woo!
We'll talk more about real shit.
Yes. You can't escape it now. We're here. You're in it with us.
Yep.
It's great.
We're here to stay.
Good job.
Bye.
See ya. This was Zero Apologies.
Dropping truths.
White folks, share this with your friends and make sure you're doing the work.
And black folks, welcome home.